Let's talk about the story of John Wilkes Booth. He was a man who had it all: fame, fortune, talent, but he threw it all away for one violent act that would make his name infamous for all time.
So let's just jump right into the moment that changed everything. The date is April 14th, 1865. The place? A packed Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. President Lincoln is there to see a play. And Booth, who's a famous actor and knows the theater like the back of his hand, just slips into the presidential box, pulls out a pistol, and fires one shot into the back of the president's head.
And then, what he does next is just pure spectacle. He leaps from the box down to the stage, a 12-foot drop, and actually breaks his leg when he lands. But even then, he gets up, holds up a knife, and shouts to the stunned crowd, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants. He's quoting Brutus, the killer of Julius Caesar. For him, this wasn't just murder, it was a performance.
But this wasn't just some random act of a madman. This was a plan carried out by one of the biggest celebrities in America. So you have to ask yourself, right? How does a guy like this end up here? To understand the crime, you really have to understand the actor.
See, before that night, John Wilkes Booth was a household name, but for completely different reasons. He was a genuine superstar of the American stage. And you can really see the transformation here, and it is just jarring. On the left, you've got this handsome, charismatic star that audiences adored. And on the right, that's the face from the wanted posters plastered all over the country. It's the same guy, just days apart.
I mean, Booth was basically born into American royalty, a theatrical dynasty. His dad was a legendary Shakespearean actor, his brother Edwin was maybe the most famous actor of the era, and John Wilkes himself was a huge star, known for being incredibly energetic and, well, critics literally called him the handsomest man in America.
And get this, the guy was loaded. In his early 20s, he was already making $20 grand a year. To put that into perspective, that's like making over $700,000 today. So this wasn't some desperate guy with nothing to lose. His reasons had nothing to do with money or failure. They were all about ideology and ego.
And here's where it gets a little eerie. Apparently, a fortune teller once told him he was destined for a grand life, but a short one that would meet a bad end. Booth was actually kind of haunted by this prediction, almost like he knew his search for greatness was going to lead him somewhere very, very dark.
And this right here, this is just dripping with irony. The only time the three Booth brothers ever acted together was in a performance of Julius Caesar. And who did John Wilkes play? Mark Antony. His brother Edwin, who was a huge supporter of Lincoln and the Union, he played Brutus, the assassin that John Wilkes looked up to. You just can't make this stuff up.
Okay, so how did this famous artist become such a political fanatic, someone willing to throw his entire life away for a cause that was already lost? You know, the Civil War didn't just split the country, it split families. And the Booths were a perfect example. While Edwin was a die-hard Unionist, John Wilkes became completely obsessed with the Confederacy. He saw their cause as this noble, heroic struggle.
And if you want to know what was really driving him, you just have to look at his own words. His fanaticism was built on a deep, deep belief in white supremacy. He wrote a letter explaining his motives, and in it, he defended slavery as a gift from God. For him, Lincoln wasn't just a political rival. He was a tyrant who was destroying the Southern way of life.
This picture is wow. It's just bone-chilling when you realize what you're looking at. That's Booth right there in the crowd, just a few feet away from Lincoln at his second inauguration. This was only 41 days before the assassination. He even told a friend later that he had an excellent chance to kill him right then and there. The idea was already in his head.
So it's really important to know that murder wasn't the first plan. Not at all. His original scheme was to kidnap President Lincoln and trade him for Confederate POWs. But that plan fell apart when Lincoln changed his travel plans. After the South surrendered, Booth's desperation turned into pure vengeance. The new plan: kill Lincoln, the vice president, and the Secretary of State, and throw the whole government into chaos.
Okay, so the shot is fired, Lincoln is dying, and Booth is on the run. What follows is one of the biggest and most intense manhunts in American history.
The government threw everything they had at this. We're talking a $100,000 reward for his capture. That was an insane amount of money back then. It's over $2 million in today's money. Suddenly, everyone in the country had a reason to be on the lookout for the assassin. So Booth, with his broken leg and an accomplice, fled south into Maryland. He got a doctor, Samuel Mudd, to set his leg, and then he spent days hiding out in swamps, relying on Confederate sympathizers to help him as he tried to get to Virginia.
And while he's hiding out, he gets his hands on some newspapers, and he is absolutely floored. He expected to be seen as a hero, a modern-day Brutus who had saved the Republic. Instead, the papers were calling him a monster. He just couldn't understand why everyone saw him as a villain.
But the clock was ticking. 12 days after the assassination, it all comes to a head. Union soldiers tracked him to a place called Garrett's Farm in Virginia and cornered him in a tobacco barn.
His accomplice surrendered, but Booth, no way. Ever the performer, he refused to be taken alive. He wanted to go out in a blaze of glory. The soldiers ended up setting the barn on fire to force him out, and in the chaos, a sergeant shot Booth in the neck. They dragged him out of the burning barn, paralyzed. He lasted for a few hours. Just as the sun was coming up, he asked a soldier to lift his hands up to his face. He looked at them and whispered his final words. Useless, useless. It's like in that final moment, he realized his grand theatrical gesture had all been for nothing.
So, Booth is gone, but the story doesn't end there, not by a long shot. His one act would change the course of American history, and not in the way he'd hoped.
As for his co-conspirators, justice was swift and harsh. 8 were put on trial. 4 were hanged, including Mary Surratt, who became the first woman ever executed by the federal government. Others, like Dr. Mudd, got life in prison.
So, what's the final verdict on John Wilkes Booth? Was he a twisted artist, a political fanatic, or just a traitor? In the end, he got exactly what he wanted, a name that would live forever. Just not as the hero of the story he imagined, but as the villain in a tragedy he created all by himself.